Starting to record. Lovely. Great. Okay, so welcome to all those who are joining via the recording. This is the spring 2024 PSHE network meeting with Manchester Healthy Schools. Thanks so much for watching along. The chat, I don't think you actually can see the chat, but we were asking people their name, their role, and their favourite plant. Just to say for everybody that one of the key things that we often try and do in PSHE is ask small talk questions before we get into big questions, so that people have a chance to warm up their brains and their voices or their typing skills. So that's like a deliberate thing that we've done. And what is your favourite plant might be a really nice thing to ask your learners before you get into bigger questions around family or relationships or whatever it is you're talking about in PSHE. So a deliberate tactic, not just me being odd, and a tool you can use straight off the bat. So there you go. All right, so let's get going. We've got lots to talk about today. So as I said, my name's Sophie. If you need them, my pronouns are they and them. I'm the PSHE lead for Manchester Healthy Schools, and that's my email address on there. So if you need to contact me, if you'd like to get in touch about anything we discussed today, feel free to email me. My inbox is open and I'm here to help. My favourite plant is a cashew tree. If you have a look up at a cashew tree, they're very interesting plants, in my opinion. Just to say that there's sort of two sections to this. Didn't change the question. Rude. Don't worry about what your favourite thing about November is. The question is, what's your favourite plant? The group agreement here is participate, engage as you like. So you are more than welcome to sit and listen and say nothing. It's very okay, I promise. I've talked to lots of people about these network meetings, and they often say, look, I like having them on in the background whilst I'm doing something else. If that is how you learn, fantastic stuff. There's no pressure to respond. For me personally, I wouldn't take anything in a situation like that. I have to be asking questions, participating. So it's up to you. So that's just a highlight for the speakers as well. Then people might just be listening. If you have got something you'd like to ask, feel free to interrupt and raise your hand. Pop it in the chat. I'm keeping an eye on that. It seems really unlikely that you'd need to discuss specific young people, schools, or anything that would break confidentiality. If you feel like you might need to do that, then maybe just pause for a second. This is being recorded. And maybe message me or email me, and we can have a conversation about that off the recording. Again, it's unlikely, but if you do need to step away at any point, then feel free to do so. We will have a break, so just something to think about there. Great. So there's 3 sections today. So we're going to have an overall update from Healthy Schools. We're then going to hear from our invited speakers. This month, we're really grateful to be joined by speakers talking on water safety and water smart schools, speakers talking on vaping, really important, and also on gender action in schools. So thank you to them for coming and for sharing their knowledge. And then we're going to have a focus on assessment. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a yellow icon. This is an opportunity for you to take action. So there's a lot of information in this session, which I know can be a bit overwhelming. So I've given you an opportunity to think about how you take what we're talking about in the meeting and turn it into momentum. Cheesy, I know, but just think that maybe you could make that into an action. As I say, ignore at your leisure. You don't have to do anything. It's all just an offer, but that might be a way of doing that. Okay, so very briefly from me, just to let you know a little bit about where we're at in the Healthy Schools cycle. Healthy Schools, obviously, is who you're here with today, and we have a cycle like any school or education organisation, and we're obviously in March now. So just to show you what that looks like for us. So our health check, which is our self-assessment tool that you complete so we know how we can support you with your access to the service, is absolutely open, but most people have completed that by now. If for any reason you're on the call and you haven't completed your health check, it's not too late to do that, and it's still really useful for us and you to do that. So please don't worry if you haven't done it, but we'd really recommend that you do, because it's really helpful for both of us. Action plans is what happens after the health check is completed. So we take your self-assessment and you complete an action plan so you can set some goals based on what you do through the year. I know a lot of you know this already. I know a lot of you have done it already. Just to do a little brag, 146 out of 187 schools in Manchester have completed their action plan and then therefore their health check. So we're really proud of how many schools have engaged with us. That's like a huge number, and lots of hard work has happened from you and us for that to happen. If you are one of those schools that has completed your action plan but not your health check, again, please, sorry, the other way around, your health check but not your action plan, please do get in touch to do that. It's the way that we know how to best support you, the way we can show you the kinds of things we offer to get where you want to be in terms of health outcomes in your school. And we do know there are schools that have completed one and not the other. So do get in touch. But generally, we're pleased. We think it's going very well. We hope you feel the same. If you have completed your action plan, that's not the end of your journey with healthy schools. In theory, that's the start, right? At this point, we'd encourage you to just be reviewing those goals that you set, possibly way back in September, and think about, how have I moved forward with them? How are we getting towards achieving them? And reach out to your healthy schools liaison officer. It might be me or any of my colleagues who can help you with that. And that's what we're here to do, particularly now through to the end of the term, and generally for you to access the ongoing support that we offer. So that's where we're at. We think it's all going very well, but just to remind you that the goals are just the start. It's not to set the goals and then, you know, pause there. I'm just going to see, I feel like somebody is not on mute, and I'm just going to mute. Yeah, I think that's okay. Lovely stuff. Great. Okay, so that's where we're at. Thank you to those who've just joined. You've not missed a huge amount. Ooh. Again. Lovely. Great. Okay. So with that in mind, a reminder, these are the kind of things that you can access for us. Again, stuff that you already know. A little yellow box there. Take the meeting, turn it into momentum. Maybe check on your action plan goals. Is there something you can move forward before the Easter holidays? And it doesn't have to be complete the goal, but it might be, I'm going to email the person I said I'd email to move forward with that. It might be, I'm going to look at our CPD calendar and see if there's some training I can book onto. So just be aware that, you know, the time is ticking. If you set a goal, it's a really good idea to be thinking, how can we move forward with that? Okay, just a note, from 2 external providers, so just to sort of flag, and we'll come back to these at the end. We've had 2 offers of support to Manchester schools, one that's more aimed at primary and one that's more aimed at secondary. They're not here today, so I'm just flagging them to you. All the information is on the links that you can click on the site here. The first is a peer mediation course, so it's a train the trainer course that's offered by Quakers of Manchester. It's been reviewed by Zain, our mental health lead, and he says it's very, very good, and that it's free and available to support primary schools to support their pupils with peer mediation and conflict. Okay, so that training is in May. If you click on the links, you can go to that if you're interested. And then the other thing to highlight is George House Trust have free in-school sessions for secondary school pupils on HIV awareness. They offer really excellent person-centered, experience-led sessions on those topics. Obviously, STI awareness is part of the statutory curriculum for RSE, and they're available in Manchester, and they have space to book through to the end of the year. So if you are a secondary colleague and you'd like to get them in, then they're absolutely available for you. So just so you know, links are there, and I'll send an email with this at the end as well, but just to highlight to you, they're available if you would like to access that. Final thing to say, I bang on about this all the time, we try to get in touch with you as best that we can, and one of the ways we do that is through our bulletin. We send a bulletin out every 2 weeks, comes out on a Tuesday, the next one is March the 12th. An action that you could do right now is just schedule some time to read the bulletin. I'm not trying to teach anyone how to suck eggs, however, there's one thing to get an email, there's another thing to go through it. We spend as much time as we can laying out information and offers that we find available in the city, either external or our own. So do just take time to read that. Often that is where we're trying to get out information to you. That's one of the best sources. So just keep an eye out for that and maybe schedule in some time to look through it. Lovely. Okay, Helen, we're coming over to you. I'm going to do the slides for you. So that's okay. Helen, over to you to talk about an exciting development in Healthy Schools Land. We're excited about it anyway.
I'm loving the question mark on the bottom of mine.
I didn't know that was what your favourite plant was. It wasn't me being like, I don't know who this person is.
Who is she? Thank you, Sophie. Yeah, I'm just here to highlight that obviously I'm sure a lot of you will be aware that this year the accreditation programme for Healthy Schools was put on pause. Normally we ask you to complete the health check, which generates a scoring system, and that sort of puts you with an award of working towards bronze, silver or gold, and that was paused in September 23 in line with the school health review. And this year we wanted to capture the hard work that schools are currently doing and celebrate those successes. And ideally, we want to share good practice. That's, we know we have the real benefit of working with, as you saw, 80% plus schools this year, and we get to hear the wonderful things that are going on within schools and trialed and trade methods, but you as individuals may not have that networking going. So the idea was that this year we have launched a brand new award system where we really want to reflect what's going on in your schools and how you are embedding the goals that you've chosen within your health education curriculum. So back in September, some emails and comms were sent out to you all about what it would begin to look like. And as part of the school health review, we will be looking at the accreditation programme, because we do get a lot of feedback from schools saying it doesn't reflect the hard work that you're doing, and that sometimes as you've maybe worked hard on one goal, it only means that your percentage moves up by a tiny amount, but you've done an absolute enormous amount of work, and we really want to reflect that. So those who have been completing their action plans this year will have noticed that we've really tried hard to record accurately what your goals are looking like and how they're being embedded and who's part of that process, because it isn't always the Healthy Schools link. It might be a number of people within your school community that work towards completing those goals. So you will see on the screen that we are going to be asking you to nominate yourself for a variety of awards, and they won't be it won't be a case of only being able to nominate yourself for just one. We're going to be saying that you can nominate yourself for several. So you'll see there are community engagement, peer of the year, support network, staff development, staff wellbeing initiative, I'm at a champion, pupil voice, health area and equality, diversity and inclusion. Along the bottom, you'll see that actually there will be an element where school health are going to be nominating you. So you might not really reflect, but we know that the hard work and the conversations that we're having with you, that we will be looking for a school health nomination, and that won't just come from Healthy Schools. That well could be that obviously we're part of the school health team and sit alongside our screening team, our immunisation team, Healthy Weight, and obviously our Healthy Child programmes, school nurses. So they will be offering their nominations of who they've worked with this year and feel like they've done fantastic jobs in certain areas. We will also be wanting to reflect on, we know the hard work that if you've been given the job title of Healthy Schools Coordinator of the Year, the umbrella that you have to work under, and you might well be a PSHE lead, you might well have been new to it and taken on this, and what does it mean? We want to reflect that we recognise the hard work those Healthy Schools coordinators do, because without you guys we wouldn't be able to engage and have those conversations with schools. And also partnership projects, and that maybe will be with ourselves, and maybe we've done a project together on something, or it might be a partnership project that you've worked with other organisations, and we want to recognise that. So how we go about doing the nomination, if I can have the next slide, Sophie. What we're going to be asking, and we have sent out, so all schools that have completed their health check and have begun to either done their action plan or have got one booked in, will have been sent an email from their Healthy Schools link that gives this award nomination form. So there are going to be certain asks that we're going to be asking of you. We would like that if you haven't yet completed an action plan, or you haven't got a date booked in, that you have that conversation with your Healthy Schools coordinator before Friday. We're going to have a closing date that the action plan doesn't need to have been done by Friday, but you need to have booked it in if you want to be nominated or nominate your school for an award. That's one of the eligibilities that we're putting in place. You can nominate yourself for as many awards as you like. There will be no maximum. If you reflect that you think that a number of those headings suit your school, please do. But what we will ask is that for every nomination, you fill in a form to explain what you've done and why you feel like you want to share your success with other people. You will see on the slide it says nominations by Monday the 17th of June. So we're going to ask, if you want to nominate yourself for an award, that you complete the form and send it into your Healthy Schools link by the Monday the 17th of June. That will then give us time, and you can send them in from now until the 17th of June, and we will then begin to collate those results. So we're going to be looking at some category winners, and obviously, like I say, what we're asking you to do is at the top you'll see it says award nomination. Put down which one it is you're putting yourself forward for. So for example, it might be community engagement, it might be pupil voice, your school name, who your Healthy School link is, and your contact details. So that's really important. We want to get a little bit of a background information because, like I said, what we really want to do is share these as a case study. So you'll see that we've got key objective. What was it that you were looking at and why? What was your success criteria? How do you know that you've reached the end of your goal? What was the process? What did you do? How long? What was the timescale? Was it a term? Was it a whole year event? What have you been doing? Who was involved? Obviously, any of your communities, and it might well be that it might be the Healthy Schools Coordinator, it might be the PSHE lead, it could be the caretaker down right through to the midday organisers. We really want to know about the highs and the lows. We always hear the polished version of things, but actually other schools want to hear where were the stumbling blocks, what hurdles did you have to jump through to get to it, and where your successes were. And then what you are thinking about doing going on from the success of it. So if you feel like you've got to the end of your goal, what will you be doing next? Where will you be leaning on, and what are your next steps within that? And then we ideally would like, photos, quotes of parents, staff, pupils, any documentation that can show your journey that you've achieved. So if we think about, obviously, pupil voice, it's quite self-explanatory. Community Engagement Award, we're looking at parent partnerships, collaborations, giving something back to the community. It could be work that's benefited your community, volunteering, fundraising, working to improve the health and well-being of your community. Staff development, we're going to be looking at how have you gone about implementing any health and wellbeing initiatives in school from CPD and the commitment to staff's CPD. The Support Network Award, we're looking at, again, working well with the wider voluntary communities, statutory sector. Is it early health, the youth service, etc.? And then, my slide's gone, but iMatter champions, we are looking at, obviously, we've launched iMatter version 3 this year. We would be looking for schools that can say that they've adopted all, part, some of the iMatter PSHE curriculum, and what have you done to adapt it to your school community needs and your health education and your pupil development. Peer of the Year, got to say that one carefully. We want you to nominate maybe another member of staff that maybe is a behind the scenes hero, or who does not work directly with young people and often goes unrecognised. It could be a head of year, it could be an exceptional manager or SLT who leads and motivates in a really fair and supportive manner. Our Staff Wellbeing Initiative is about anything that you've done that's had a positive impact on staff wellbeing. We know how important that is for your school communities. Quality Diversity Inclusion Award, here we can look at how have you promoted inclusion, what's your SEND provision, etc. That anything that you feel comes under that umbrella. And the Health Area Award is you looking at maybe that you've chosen a particular goal in a particular health area, for example, mental health or drugs and alcohol, and that you've done an outstanding contribution towards it. Like I say, the other 3 are going to be nominations that we are going to reflect, and we would be letting you know that we've awarded you or nominated you for that. And at the end of the year, we're hoping to do a celebration of the many different case studies and sort of share widespread the nominations that have come through. So I hope that makes sense. We have sent quite a lot of information. If you want any more information, we're going to be sending out some examples of what that form looks like so that you are aware of what you need to fill in, how much detail. And like I said, the dates and times, we will consistently update you via email at correspondence, via Healthy Schools link, or via the bulletin. But if you do want more information and you feel like you missed the email correspondence, you can email Healthy Schools on our inbox, or you can directly email myself. Just to let you know that actually in a week's time, I actually am going to be leaving Healthy Schools and we will be having a new team lead, but I will certainly make sure that I set up my inbox to reflect who will be taking over that role and who would be your next protocol. But you know, you've got the Healthy Schools coordinators and your links into Healthy Schools team who will be delighted to support you, but you will get more information about our awards. So I'm going to love you and leave you there with Sophie, and hope that made sense.
Thanks so much, Helen. We really appreciate having you here to explain all that. It's great. And welcome, Akeem. It's nice to see you. Hi. Just a quick one there to just pause and say that turn the meeting into momentum. So maybe have a think about a time when you can look through those awards and just really consider who you might nominate. You are allowed to nominate, you know, yourself, your own work. We're really all about championing that. You can nominate somebody else. And remember that, like, you can't win without being nominated. Do you know what I mean? So and also, and I didn't really want to write this, but someone has to win. So we need people to nominate for each of the awards. We know there's really good practice out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be something that you would like to highlight, even if it's overcoming something tricky that you then feel satisfied with. All of that stuff that Helen said. I just want to pause there. People maybe in the chat or out loud, does anyone have any burning awards-based questions that you'd like to ask at this point? You're very welcome to, because I know it's a change from previous years that can be tricky. Anything that anyone would like to clarify at this point? Don't worry if not. Nice, good stuff. Great. I hope that means everyone is already busy worrying, thinking about what they're going to do. I will say we've already had one school nominate themselves, so just so you know, it's started, it's happened, so that's good. At the moment they've won, so do feel free to make it a more competitive award process. Yeah, any questions there, very, very welcome. Fab, lovely stuff. Thanks so much, Helen, that's great. Okay.
I've just got one from Rackhouse saying, can we nominate a school overall as an individual? Both, depending on what your award you're going for, Rackhouse. Yeah. So if it's the peer of the year, you would have maybe nominate an individual, but if it's pupil voice, you'd maybe nominate your school for what they've done. So pick and choose. It really is for you to decide if it's an individual or a whole school.
Am I right in saying, Helen, there's two different pro forma kind of that you fill out depending on whether it's like an individual, or is that not the case?
For the peer of the year, I have slightly adapted the nomination form because obviously not all of those headings are applicable. So when you got the email from your Healthy Schools coordinator, there were two links. For majority of them, it will be the one that you've just seen on the slide. For the peer of the year one, I slightly changed it because obviously not all the categories sort of fitted in with what we wanted to hear from you. That's the only one. So there's just a different form for peer of the year. The rest of them use the documentation that you've just seen on the slide, and like you say, if there's somebody particular that's been an iMatter champion, or you know led on pupil voice, then nominate them and tell us what they've done, or you can nominate yourself as a whole school for what you've done for pupil voice, etc. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, that's really useful. Thank you. And I think if you look at the category here, so the nomination form, sorry, it says who was involved. So it might be everyone was involved, or you might have a team, maybe you're talking about your early years provision. They've been particularly excellent. They often are when it comes to PSHE. And obviously if you've got named folk, that might be nice for them. But equally, if you're like the whole school was involved in this from, everybody, then that's absolutely great as well. Really good question. Thanks so much, Rackhouse. Lovely stuff. Anything else? Now's the time to ask. Keep your eyes open for those emails. We will be pestering you about this because we really want to make sure that we're shouting about the great work you guys are doing. Lovely. All right. I hope to see a nomination from all 16 of you on the call. Then we're sorted. Lovely stuff. Great. Okay. We're not going to have a break. Sorry about that, because we've got lots to get on. But if we get through the next bit, then we might crack on to that. So I'm really pleased. Thanks so much, Andy. It's going to be you in a moment. So I don't know if that was deliberate that you turned your camera on. It was very smooth. So I'm really pleased to invite 3 speakers to talk to you all today. In previous PSHE network meetings, we've divided into primary and secondary provision to make it nice and specific, but actually all 3 speakers here today have things that are relevant across the spectrum of education, which is really great because it means that we can all be here together and ask lots of questions. Our first speaker is Andy Lane, who's the Education Manager from Royal Life Saving Society UK, to talk about water smart schools. I've really struggled to say that, Andy. I think it's my list. But there we go. And Andy, if you did say in the chat, but if you'd like to tell us your favourite plant, we'd always be keen to hear. I don't think you're muted, but I can't hear you. Just try speaking for me 1 second there. No. Oh no. Try it without the mic.
How's that?
Still. There we go. Oh,
Is that better?
My heart stopped there, Andy.
Sorry.
It's good to keep you on your toes. No, it's fine. We should have done a tech run. You can, I believe, take control of the screen, or I can click your slides. Either and both are fine. Do you want me to click?
I'll let you flick for me. Can you do that for me, please? Is that okay?
Yeah, no problem at all. Here we are. And what was your favourite plant?
Oh, the pitcher plant.
Oh yes, you said. Lovely.
Yeah,
stuff.
the bug-eating carnivorous pitcher plant.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I won't say why. It's just interesting. Just like it.
Yeah. Perfect. Over to you.
Thank you, Sophie. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to speak this afternoon. So I'm Andy. I'm the Education Manager for the Royal Life Saving Society UK. And for those of you who don't know who we are, and not many people do, to be fair, we're essentially a registered charity, and our primary aim is to reduce the number of fatal and non-fatal water-related drownings. They're all water-related, obviously, drowning incidents across the UK and beyond. Set up in the late 1800s. We provide a whole host of resources and materials for anybody to deliver water safety education. So on my side of the business, the charity wing, I look after education for schools, leisure centres, any sort of educational establishment. And as I said before, our aim is to reduce water incidents of drownings. So although we work with leisure centres, clubs, societies, swimming schools. We also work with Cubs, Scouts, but in particular schools, and that can be any type of school. It can be nursery all the way up to post-16. It can be colleges, it can be PRUs, it can be SEND schools. It doesn't matter. We work with anybody who is looking for water safety education of one form or another. So what we've done starting this year, we've set up a new award program called Water Smart Schools. And essentially, it's a program that aims to provide schools with education resources to basically educate their pupils on how to stay safe in, on and around water. So with the statistic you've got there, and I can't say statistic properly, I do apologise, we are seeing a rapid increase in the number of fatalities amongst children between the ages of 2 and 16 compared to the 5-year average. So that's roughly 35 accidental child fatalities a year. So a couple of questions I normally get asked when I do this sort of presentation is firstly, well, you know, in a school environment with all the competing things that we have to do, why do we need to bother looking at water safety? Because the incidences in our particular area are so low. To which my answer is twofold. Firstly, as you can see there, it is on the increase. It does affect more and more people in various areas around the country, not just on the coast, but also inland. In particular, there are more inland drownings than there are on coastal areas. And secondly, it is happening to children, which is obviously a big issue to yourselves and a big issue for us. So that's kind of where we're coming from on this. So if we can move on to the next slide, please, I'll tell you a bit about the actual programme itself. So Water Smart Schools Award, it's an accreditation programme, as I said before, for all schools. It gives schools all the materials to deliver class-based water safety education using a whole range of resources, including lesson plans, videos, animations, the whole works really. It allows whole school and community involvement. It's an excellent project for the school council to involve themselves with. And as it says there, it fosters a greater understanding of water safety issues locally and actually further afield. So it prepares children to be safe in, on and around water wherever they may be. At the end of the programme, the school that takes part will receive an award level at either bronze, silver or gold, depending on the level of commitment and the criteria that they've addressed as they've gone through. Next slide, please. So what are the basics? So it works very broadly in other familiar award programs and schemes that schools will take part in. So it's like Eco Schools, Arts Mark, the music one I can never remember the name of, in that a school will work on a set of activities to address a certain number of criteria. They'll then evidence that criteria and they'll receive a corresponding award level at the end of it. Our Water Smart Schools has no cost. Okay, so we don't charge for anything. We don't charge for the award. We don't charge for the support. We don't charge for the materials. The water safety education resources are all class or hall based. You don't need a pool for this. The reason for this is because recently we found that so many schools are struggling to access swimming pools, whether that's because the leisure centre has closed, changed its hours, cost of transport, whatever it may be. So in association with the National Water Safety Forum, which is kind of the official body for water safety organisations throughout the country, we agreed that we would look at providing class-based resources so that everybody could receive a certain level of water safety education. So regardless of background, gender, etc. Okay, so this covers absolutely everybody, so everybody can get something. The lesson plans themselves and the whole programme, it's built around the health and wellbeing section of the PSHE aims and objectives, but it's done in a very broad sense. So it can be used in English schools, it can be used in independent schools, it can be used in Wales, it can be used in Scotland, it can be used abroad. I've even got a school in Kuala Lumpur doing it at the moment. So they're very broad, very flexible sets of criteria that we use for this. Each award level has its own set. There are only a few criteria. They're very easily achievable. And as I said there, all resources and support is provided throughout the whole term of the actual course itself. The school can complete it in a timescale to suit themselves. So most schools would do this over maybe half a term, maybe 4 or 5 weeks, something like that. It doesn't take a massive amount of input. The lessons themselves, for Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, there are about 5 lessons that are specifically water safety education based, and they address one of the 4 points of the Water Safety Code, which is the national standard for water safety accepted by all organisations and all nations. So schools will do it over a very short time scale. Next slide, please. So in terms of what we provide, then we provide as a starting point the actual guide booklet, which will take you through what it's all about and give you an idea of the sort of things that a school might do in order to achieve one of the award levels. I say might because it is a guide booklet. The things that we put in there are for guidance. There are no hard and fast rules about what schools do with it. As long as they address certain criteria, the whole thing is very, very flexible and very, very open. as it says there, we do provide all of the lesson plans for Key Stage 1 to Key Stage 3, and they can be adapted for Key Stage 4. All of the supporting materials that go with those lesson plans are also provided, so PowerPoints, quiz, animation videos, and everything else. Can it be done in an individual year group? Right, so we look for whole school awareness of water safety education with this programme. So awareness can be done in lots of different ways. So for example, we provide a whole school assembly resource. So you could do the assembly, which is essentially a PowerPoint with our water safety animation embedded in it. That can be done whole school, so everybody gets a very general overview of water safety. You can then do the focused lessons with a specific year group. The majority of schools that have signed up at primary, they do this generally speaking with a year 2 and a year 6, and they do it in the summer term as soon as SATs are out of the way. It doesn't matter who you do it with. You could do it with a focus group, you could do it with 1 year group, it doesn't matter. As long as a cohort gets the dedicated education resources, teaching, learning, and goes through the whole process. Okay, so it is broad in that sense. The other ways to promote awareness are to literally post things on his social media. This week, year 4, looking at water safety education, or this week, year 6, or sorry, school council are doing a water safety poster competition, that sort of thing. So social media, newsletters promote whole school and whole community awareness. Okay. Next slide, please. Oh God, I can't see that. So it kind of outlines the sort of things that a school might do in terms of delivery. We can't come into school, generally speaking, and deliver these things for you. We don't have a volunteer or a staffing base that can do that. So we look for obviously all of this to be delivered by school staff. But as I said, it is very short, it is very simple to do. So we have the assembly resource at primary level. Preferably done at whole school level, but you don't have to. If your school's a big one, just aim it at a key stage or a class, it doesn't matter. The lesson plans to a chosen year group or year groups, which I just mentioned. There is a pre and post education quiz to assess knowledge and understanding. At primary, it's essentially 6 questions on a PowerPoint with associated pictures, and it's done in a whole class environment where the teacher leads the children through the questions, looks at the pictures, bit of a discussion, and then they vote on the answer. It's useful for us for our statistics and our data handling, really. At secondary level, it's an online quiz which is far more detailed. The results from the online quiz feed into a national body of work looking at knowledge and understanding of water safety amongst a certain age range. So it's a national level piece of work. We look for the involvement of school council or school parliament, or whatever you may call it these days, at some level. So school councils have done things like they've done water safety assemblies for a particular key stage. They've made water safety leaflets for younger children, or they've done water safety poster competitions throughout school, or they've done fundraising. It's entirely up to them how they do it and at what level they do it. A key piece of this is a field trip to a local body of water to add context to the learning and to raise awareness of what's actually on your doorstep, because it's quite surprising, especially in the big cities, how many school children do not know what is literally up the road from where they live or where they go to school. So we look for a field trip. That a field trip is essentially visiting a canal or the riverbank, or well, preferably away from the riverbank, but the river, or a lake, or a reservoir or something like that, or the seaside if you're on the coast, just to conduct whatever sort of activity suits you best. So it could be looking for safety signs and safety equipment. It could be looking for hazards and making a report based on it. There's a whole range of things they can do with that. If you're savvy and you're in the right sort of area, you can get another agency to do that aspect of the work for you. So certain water utility companies will provide that sort of field trip education. The Canal and River Trust would also do that sort of thing. So we do recommend that you sort of contact them for that element of it. But again, you're equally welcome to do it yourself. It's not an issue for us. raising awareness of water safety with the wider community. I've mentioned that it's basically through your newsletters and your social media. Again, some schools will do just that, and that's fine. Some schools will do a whole water safety week where they'll have parents and carers come into school to look at the work the kids have done, to view an assembly, that sort of thing. It just depends on what you feel like doing and what you've got the time to do, really. It doesn't have to be the extreme, we do everything. It's up to you. Again, at primary level, we look for a commitment to school swimming, which obviously all English primary schools are required to do as per the national curriculum. Evidencing that is easy for me because I simply get your PE and sports premium document from your website and I can see what you're doing in terms of swimming attainment. If you're secondary, obviously secondary schools don't necessarily do school swimming. That's fine. We recognise that. That is not a barrier to achieving the higher levels of the award. Because you don't address that, it doesn't mean you don't get gold. Okay, it's just there as an added bonus for us, really. And finally, we also look for an element of first aid education as part of the programme. Again, it depends what you do at primary. I think the requirement is that children know what to do in an emergency, who to call, as in 999, and what to say, and that's fine. At secondary, I think we've got on the curriculum now CPR education. It's an opportunity to bring in other organisations. British Heart Foundation, I think, do online courses for this now. St John's Ambulance, that sort of thing. So again, there are lots of aspects that you can bring into this to make it more of a holistic package if you want to. If you don't, that's fine. There are still ways to address the various requirements anyway. Next slide, please.
Just to say, you've got about a minute, just so you know. I don't know if
Right.
that's enough time, just a minute
That's
or two.
fine. That's fine. That's fine. Those are just testimonials from teachers who'd gone through the process, had no issues, had no problems, said it was good, blah, blah, blah. Next slide, please. These are kids actually doing some of the activities, as you can see there: star shape, learn to float, throwing, whatever. Final slide, please. There we go. So yeah, so if anybody has any questions or wants to find anything out, it is there on there for you. Look at our website. I can be contacted on the email addresses that you see there if anybody's interested. It's really simple. It's really straightforward. It's really quick. It's totally free. You can build it into your normal PSHE delivery over the course of a few days. So yeah, if you can push it, give it a go, that's great. Drop me a line. That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Andy. I really appreciate it. Sorry for rushing at the end. And just to reiterate to everybody, I will be emailing out all the information, but if for any reason you lose that contact and you don't remember, then you can always get in touch with me and I'll put you in touch with Andy in this programme. I'm just going to briefly flick back to this slide because look how much fun everyone's having in this slide. Very interested in this. Yeah, and as Helen quite rightly says, we have Kerry Hewitt, who's our unintentional injury prevention lead, who leads on this area, and she can support with water safety as well. So, you know, it's a really, really important area in Manchester. You might not have considered it in your curriculum at this point because we do think of ourselves as landlocked, but obviously we're always close to water and drowning is always something to think about. So thank you so much, Andy. Appreciate that. Lovely stuff. Okay, Chris, thank you so much for waiting patiently on the call with us. We're going to be coming to you sort of swiftly now. I've called you Chris, but maybe I should have said Christopher. My apologies.
No, Chris is absolutely fine. Christopher's my Sunday name.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, I'm in trouble.
All right, good. Well, you're not in trouble. So just to welcome Chris to the call. So Chris is the cluster manager for CGL Eclipse and is going to be talking to us about vaping, some new resources that are available across the city. Chris, would you like me to click for you? Would you like to take over the screen? I don't actually.
How do I click myself? Do I just take control? Does that
Yeah,
work?
you can just. It should do. Yeah, there you go.
If I.
And then have a click.
Oh, how's it?
If you just click this, have you try clicking the screen again? There you go.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
The joys of technology.
I know, look at the world. We live in the future for sure.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, so thank you first and foremost for allowing me to come and speak to you guys today. Much appreciated. So what I want to talk to you about is vaping and young people specifically. So let me just go and move over from there. So I'll talk a bit about, so I'll give you an introduction to who I am first. So my name's Chris Henniker. Some of you may have met me before, some of you may have not. I've done a hell of a lot of work over in Tameside with PSHE networks. I'm writing drug and alcohol education programs for Tameside schools. So if any of you guys have worked in Tameside, you very well may have heard me speak before or been to some of my training sessions. For those of you guys that haven't, so I am the cluster manager for Change, Grow, Live for Young People Services, which basically means I oversee all of our young people and family services across Greater Manchester, which for Manchester City is CGL Eclipse. So Eclipse is the young person's drug and alcohol service, which operates across the city of Manchester. We've been around in Manchester for as long as I can remember. I've been working in drug and alcohol services for about 23 years. And I think for as long as I've been working in drug and alcohol services, the young person service in Manchester has been called Eclipse. It's been delivered by a few different providers in that time. Change, Grow, Live have been delivering it for the past 8 years now, I think. But it's always been called Eclipse. And the service is delivered via these kind of following pathways. So very quickly, if you are under the age of 18, and you require some support around substance misuse, alcohol misuse, we can provide free support to those individuals. And that can be anything from a brief one-off education session, a little bit of advice, a little bit of guidance, to more really in-depth specific support if a young person is using substances more problematically or even dependently. We have access to a full clinical team on site should we ever need it. It is very rare a young person ever needs clinical support. More often than not, their substance misuse is experimental in nature. Very rarely is it dependent and problematic where we have to kind of provide clinical support. But if there is an instance where that is required, we can provide that support, and we do have full access to full clinical teams. It's a free service. We do a lot of work in schools, do a lot of work primarily with secondary education, but we do some work with primary schools as well. Do a lot of work with the colleges, do a lot of work with children's home, youth justice services, children's social care, and we work primarily in the community. So lots of our kind of one-to-one sessions are delivered in community spaces, predominantly schools, colleges, but we do have some community venues which we work out of as well. We also run a young adults offer for 18 to 25-year-olds, which may not be relevant to you guys, but I'll just briefly talk about it. So what we realized was a long time ago, when somebody turns the age of 18, they're not necessarily thinking like an adult, acting like an adult, making adult choices, and their substance misuse is often very much young person's focused in nature. So we decided to keep the 18 to 25-year-old young adults with the young person service and offer a young adult, young person's model of interventions. And we found that we get much better engagement with that cohort and also much better outcomes from them as well. So we also provide that support. This will be of interest maybe to some of you guys, certainly in primary schools, maybe secondary. We also have 3 specialist children's workers who provide what we call hidden harm support. It's for children who have been impacted by parental substance misuse. So any children that have been living in a household where mum or dad, even older siblings potentially as well, where substance misuse has been a problem in that household and they've been impacted by it. They don't necessarily need to live in that household. Now they could be living with grandma, and they could be living in residential care. They could be living in a situation where this has been historic for them, but they still feel they want some space to kind of talk about historically what's happened to them. We can also provide support around that. Again, that support is provided in the communities, predominantly in schools. We also have a family support offer for anybody that is worried or concerned about somebody else's drug or alcohol use. So it could be a mother who's concerned about a 15-year-old son using cannabis. It could be a wife concerned about her husband's recreational cocaine and alcohol use. If you are someone that is worried about somebody else's drug or alcohol use, we have a family support offer. And then what we also have, which is what I'm going to talk to you guys about today, is a free professionals training offer. So we offer free professionals training across the board to anyone that is working with children and young people across Manchester. The training that is on offer is generally substance misuse focused. So we offer a drug and alcohol awareness training. So looking at what drugs are popular across Manchester, what young people are using, what social media role has to play in how young people, one, view substances, but also how they access substances, which has completely changed the landscape. So we spend a lot of time looking at modern youth culture, social media, and how that is kind of driving lots of trends with young people. We have another training session on hidden harm, so looking at the impact of substance misuse on children, which is very much trauma-informed, kind of ACEs specific. And we also have another session on exploitation, looking at how young people can be groomed into criminal exploitation around drug dealing by county lines. But we also look at how substances can also be used for child sexual exploitation as well. And then in addition to that, what we have now created is a brand new session on vaping and young people. Because what we realised is that the vast majority of young people that we see, and this is probably resonates with some of you guys in this space as well, that we have seen an exponential growth in young people and vaping. If you kind of work with young people, which you guys do, if you kind of look around school gates, if you look at the kind of journeys into schools, if you look at young people's social peer groups, vaping has become a very, very popular thing for lots of our young people, predominantly teenagers, but we are seeing children as young as kind of years 4s, 5s and 6s in primary schools as well, that are either being exposed to kind of vaping or been found with vapes on them. So we are seeing them much, much younger. And what we realised was there was no real information or resources for professionals to kind of access to get some information to how to support young people or what to do if they kind of come across this kind of stuff. But also the landscape around vaping changes so quickly. The legislation, the laws is changing quite quickly as well. So what we've decided to do is create a free professionals training resource to give people like yourself some really good, solid foundational knowledge into what vaping is, the kind of history of vaping, what's out there, the differences between kind of legal vaping, illegal vaping, different devices, how it may be linked to kind of cannabis-based vaping as well. And we kind of realized that there was no one really talking about this stuff or providing that kind of support. So we've added this free professionals training to our training calendar. So over recent years, I kind of just said this, we've seen a significant increase in the use of vapes for young people under the age of 18 across Manchester. And based on recent research, shows no signs of slowing down. So we've been doing some partnership work with various different agencies, and ASH are a kind of smoking research kind of agency. They've been doing lots of work around young people nationally around this, and what they're finding is the growth of vaping with young people is actually growing near on 50% year on year. So the growth of this stuff is really, really worrying. It doesn't show any signs of slowing down. So in response to this, we've developed this training with public health. We've done some work with environmental health. We've also got training standards involved with some of this stuff as well. And we've created a 2-hour, really good quality, robust training session, which we've had amazing feedback on so far. The training is delivered online via Microsoft Teams. It's easily accessible, and the idea is to give professionals foundational knowledge about the facts of vaping, also highlights the associated dangers and harms and the modern culture in which young people find themselves. Similar to the substance misuse training I spoke about, we look at social media, how social media drives some of these things, looking at local trends, and just potential impact it can have on young people on their choices and potential risks involved as well. Oh, sorry, I've just gone too far. So this is generally the content of the training. So we look at what is a vape, what is vaping. We look at the different types of vaping devices that are out there. We look at the marketing aspect of this and how different types of marketing is aimed at certain children, young people. We look at the differences between legal devices and illegal devices as well. And what we actually find is when professionals attend this, they actually found that some of the professionals that have attended have actually been purchasing illegal devices unbeknownst to themselves as well. And the lines are really blurred, and it's really difficult to differentiate between legal and illegal. We look at the differences between smoking traditional tobacco products and vaping, regulation, legislation, the environmental impact on physical health. We look at the reasons as to why young people vape, social media, youth culture, the differences between kind of experimental use and problematic use. So if young people are vaping to cope with mental health issues, use it as an appetite suppressant, for example, those kind of issues. We look at how safeguard and exploitation may be kind of coming into vaping. We have had reports of children and young people being given vapes as a grooming tactic, grooming into exploitative practices. And then we also provide lots of harm reduction advice off the back end of it as well. Maybe you should have not. I'm pressing the buttons too quick now. Can I go back there?
If you go to the bottom of the screen.
Oh, I've got it.
Did it? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. So upon completion of training, so the idea is you guys attend the 2-hour training session, or teams or your colleagues do. At the end of the 2-hour training session, we have also now created a resource library, which is filled with lesson plans, school policy ideas, brief interventions, harm reduction advice, poster campaigns. It is an ever-growing resource library, and Healthy Schools have kindly allowed us to host this on their website. So if you go onto the Healthy Schools website on the Padlet, there is a wealth of resources. So once you complete the training package, we signpost people onto there, and we are giving you guys a wealth of resources as well as the foundation knowledge, just to support your work, support your conversations, and just support some of that kind of interactions with young people who may be either thinking about vaping or have already started. And then in addition to that, we've also created a vaping screening tool, which allows professionals to assess the needs of young people who may have said they've started vaping or maybe thinking about vaping. And then you can then assess whether you think if the problems are significant enough, then you can refer them into a service like ours for additional support. It's worth noting as well, we are not commissioned to deliver support around vaping, but we've realised there is a gap in that provision. So what we are suggesting is you guys come on the professionals training session, get the foundational knowledge, have access to the resource library, use the screening tool. If after you to provide some support, some guidance, done some lesson plans, and we've still got some concerns about some of our young people, we think there's really risky behaviour taking place around vaping. If we think there may be some concerns around exploitation, some concerns around using vaping as a tool to cope with mental health, as an appetite suppressant, if they're really struggling to cut down or stop and we don't quite know where to go, then the screening tool can be completed, sent to Eclipse for the referral, and then we will give you a call and assess whether we think we can provide some additional support in addition to what you guys may have already done. So that is it in a nutshell. I won't go through kind of what I sometimes on the training session, I start to show people the resources, but I'm just mindful of time. We haven't got that. So I'll stop talking there, mindful of time, and I'll just kind of take any questions if anyone's got any.
Just while people are formulating those, Chris, I just want to say massively thank you for that. Partly thank you for explaining the offer, for collaborating with Kelly, who's our drugs and alcohol worker that folks will probably know, that to get that up on our website, and I'll send that link out as well to people. Yeah. But also, I think that it's just worth noting, I'm trying to say this in the least cheesy way, we all know that people are talking about vaping a lot. It's been really amazing to watch the way that the drugs and alcohol education landscape has been able to react. So in such a relatively quick turnaround, but with such a robust response, all that knowledge and skills of drugs and alcohol education and substance misuse education is already there. But to pivot to this new sort of thing has been kind of amazing to watch. So anyone who's dealing with this in school, you're not on your own is the big message I would say. Like, people have thought about this, they've created resource, do reach out. I know we've got a lot of primary schools on the call, and I think it's really important, even if this isn't something that's a concern in your primary school community, in PSHE, we always want you to know where kids are headed at secondary, to think about the foundational stuff you need to be doing in primary. So maybe having a look at those resources to make sure that where you're leading with your primary curriculum will meet what they're going to need at secondary when they inevitably will come across vaping more often. Yeah. But also it may well be relevant to them, obviously, at that point.
Yeah, I would echo that as well. I think what we see in services like mine especially is we are reactive in nature by default, and we get involved after the fact, after something's gone wrong, after someone's been found with a vape, after somebody started taking substances. And for me, that early intervention approach, which you just described there, is absolutely crucial. The more information we can give to our young people at kind of the early intervention prevention stage, the better the outcomes are, the better equipped they are to deal with those situations and those circumstances and make educated, informed choices as and when those situations arise. And you can be absolutely certain that once they transition from primary school age into secondary schools, they will be exposed to much older children that are kind of 13, 14 and 15. And as you guys know, they go from the kind of safety and sanctity of kind of class sizes of, I don't know what they are, I imagine maybe 30, to the kind of a year group of maybe 150. And then they're also exposed at age 11 to kind of all the teenagers, 14, 15, 16. Language changes, behavior changes, and access to substances, and certainly vaping, definitely changes. I think what we need to do as services like mine, and certainly as professionals that work with young people, is get a lot better at that early intervention and education stuff, and not wait for things to go wrong and try and do it as early as we can. And the whole idea and ethos behind this program is exactly as you've said there, is around that education, early intervention and prevention.
That's brilliant, thank you. I can't seem to take back control. You might have to relinquish.
Sorry, yeah, I was got control.
It's okay.
Just in relation to the training days, we've been running these since January. We've put a session on there on Wednesday afternoons, generally around the 20th, 22nd, 23rd of every month. We've got a session scheduled every day up until the end of this school year. So the last session is around the 20th of July. I can send you a briefing if you want, which has links to all the Eventbrite bookings. And if you want to circulate that amongst the network, feel free to kind of click on those links and just book the place as and when you can have got capacity to attend.
Good stuff. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? I know that folks are out there. If there's any questions for Chris, now's the time. People are just listening, which is great. Okay, well, brilliant, good stuff. Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay. So am I okay to leave? Because I've got another meeting starting shortly.
Absolutely, yeah,
okay?
absolutely. We won't keep you captive, don't worry.
Okay, fantastic.
For your
I
time,
will send
really
you the kind of briefing with the training kind of links on it as well. And I just want to say thank you again for everyone for letting me kind of speak for the last kind of 15 minutes or so.
No worries. Thanks
Happy
so
Wednesday.
much.
Take care, everyone.
Happy Wednesday to you. Okay, folks, so we've got one more external speaker, as you can see on the call. Angahard is here. What I'd recommend is we're not going to take a break. We're going to take a break after this speaker, but the sort of youth worker in me is just going to acknowledge that we've been listening for a bit. So no one else other than myself and Angahard have their cameras on, so you're all safe. But just do me a favour and just stand up or something and make yourself feel like you are in the room, because I know that an hour and a bit is a long time to listen. We will have a break after this before we get into the more sort of interactive element, but it's just the way the timings works this time. Shake your hands, do whatever you need to do so you can actually listen to the last bit. Okay. Also, I hope people are still out there. If anyone is still out there, feel free to put in the chat that you're still out there. I'm worried that it's just me and you. But maybe people are. Kat's out there. Great. Thanks, Kat. Lovely
Still
stuff.
out here.
Lovely. Thanks, Akeem. Nice to see you. You okay? Great. Good. Yeah, you can turn your camera off again. It's absolutely fine. That was just me being insecure. People are here. That's great. Thanks, everyone. Sorry, I shouldn't have let my insecurities come onto the camera. Okay, good. Yeah, people are here. Okay, thanks everybody, I appreciate it. Sometimes you just need to know, you know. So we've heard about water smart schools, we've heard about the offer around vaping, which is brilliant. We're now going to hear, I've said Angahard, and now I'm concerned that I've said that wrong 3 times. Is that right? It isn't, is it?
So what I love is that you've pronounced it differently each time, which is
I thought I'd just
fantastic.
go with it.
No, I love
because
it.
We
it's
had a long conversation about it, and then I just
don't overthink it. It's Angharad.
Just
So
wrong, really.
Just roll it off. Don't overthink.
Just incredibly wrong each time. Angharad, sorry. There we go.
Don't worry, I've heard. Well, when it's on autocorrect, it goes to anchored, which I'm like, okay, fair.
My sincere apologies, genuinely. Angharad Morgan is here today to talk to us about the Gender Action Programme that is delivered through DEXI, who, if you aren't aware of, I highly recommend that you look up. The Development Education Centre in Sheffield, our neighbours over the hills, and they really are like a world-leading organisation in education. I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but they are. So it's very exciting to have Angharad here today to talk through this Gender Action Programme. You have a choice. You may take control of the screen, or you can let me click. Either way is absolutely fine.
Shall I take control? Have you put my presentation
in there? It's all there.
Cool.
I have.
Love it.
Can't say your name, but I did do that.
So. I think I'm in control, so everyone can see this right now. So I'm just clicking to move on. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. Perfect. Hello, everybody. I hope I'll make this as so I've got 15 minutes from 9 minutes past 2. Is that right? Perfect.
That's correct. Yes.
Because you did say you were strict on timings. Thankfully, I can talk really quickly. But yeah, thank you for sort of holding out for me. I know that fear of wondering whether someone is actually still there. And in fact, when I'm in a classroom, I often ask if anyone is still there sometimes, which I'm sure you can all empathise with. So I'm the Gender Action Programme Manager, and I am also a secondary school teacher. I'm in Newcastle, so a little bit further north. And as you can see, I look like I'm in the sun. There is actually a bit of sunlight here today, which is very exciting. So hopefully it's not too rainy across on your side. So I'm going to talk to you about gender action in the programme. And I think that's really significant about this programme is that it allows you to be sort of rewarded for the work that you're already doing. So hopefully it can be a real benefit for you. So I'll talk you through kind of a little bit about its history, how it works, and then how you can get involved. And I'm sure Sophie will sort of send all of this stuff to you afterwards anyway, so you can sort of drop me an email then. So these are our, I was going to say, so you can have a look at these when you have the PowerPoint. That's absolutely fine. So these are our handles and our Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. So yeah, as we said, we like to engage with a range of different audiences. So we don't work with the students as such. We're working with educators, working with senior leaders, and so we have a sort of broad range of spaces that we want to target. And DEXI is very much focused on action research and evidence-based research, and the other projects that we also run at the organisation are very sort of focused from an intersectional social justice feminist lens. That's how we sort of run all of our work. So if that's kind of your interest, then as we said, like, have a look at the other things that we're doing. So Gender Action was started several years ago by the IOP, King's, UCL, UCML, and they initially wanted to just address the issues that were happening in the underrepresentation of females in STEM subjects. Okay, as you can see, so they're all science-focused organisations. So that was their real focus. They realised that not only were female students not sort of selecting it for A level, but also again that leads to the impact in the workplace. So female students weren't represented in university and then subsequently the workplace, and that of course has an impact. You know, if women aren't in science, that has an impact on investments, the research that we're done, healthcare, medicine, all of those kind of things. So we are not just a random picture of Lewis Hamilton on the screen. We are supported and funded by Mission 44, who is supported and run by, well, a team by Lewis Hamilton. So he is the reason that we're able to actually run the programme. At the moment, we're on a 2-year contract. We're hoping for a 3rd-year extension, and you know, we are drumming up a lot of interest and a lot of support, as you can imagine, because you know, this is not just a hot topic now, but has been you know, instilled in schools for a long time. So yeah, we're hoping for that 3rd year as well. And after his contract with Ferrari as well, he definitely will have enough money to be able to give us a little bit more support. So you know, whether he'll go with that argument, I'm not sure. So in terms of what the issue is and what Gender Action does, the reason that we sort of exist, and as I said, you know, initially it was started up looking at, right, female representation in STEM, how do we get more girls into science, okay? But now, actually, all of us as a team, so when it was run by King's, that was their main focus, but now our focus and our sort of background and specialism is social justice, is the social sciences. So we take a broader approach. So even if you're thinking, well, actually, we don't have much of an issue with representation in STEM, or perhaps, you know, that isn't really a focus of the school, that doesn't matter, because we also take more of a whole school approach and consider other factors. So when you sign up to become a member of Gender Action, we offer you free training and support throughout the programme. We get a range of different schools. So some schools have been doing this for several years, and they've, you know, got really passionate teachers who have got like a PhD in the topic. So they perhaps are like, well, maybe we don't need the training. But other teachers who are really interested in the area but haven't perhaps got that as much knowledge as they would like, they can come to our training and really try and increase that knowledge. So some of the things that we cover, and the reason that we feel that we need to exist, looking at things like sexist language and sexual harassment, students having to police each other, and all of these sort of findings were taken out of the UK Feminista and NEU Sexism, It's Just Everywhere Sexism report in 2017. Looking at the word feminism and how that's become sort of a negative term, and there was recent research done by King's College looking at the perception of feminism and things going too far, and all of those perceptions means that, you know, these sorts of programs are really key at the moment. Also, online influencers and the manosphere, looking at the impact of pornography and other sort of acts depicted in pornography, including non-fatal strangulation, which Jess Phillips is very sort of interested in and involved in at the moment as well. So looking at how we sort of manage behaviours such as safeguarding versus behaviour management and kind of reprimanding children versus sort of creating that open door policy for them to be able to talk and come in. Looking at the impact that sort of sexism has on mental health, so not just the mental health of our female students, but any student, regardless of how they identify. And, you know, and there's a lot of work going on about male students' mental health and their sort of definitions of masculinity and the kind of confusion around where they belong. And then you've got the Tony Parker's man box there as a sort of example. You've got that contradictory messages and they're not quite sure where to place themselves. And then also parental expectations. So at Gender Action, we work with nurseries all the way up to sort of sixth form age. And it's interesting because there's so many different requirements depending on what age group you're at. So we're looking at perhaps more of the parents and their views and opinions when they're sort of early years, up to, you know, a lot more peer sort of focus as we go as they go up to school. So in terms of how the programme works, so we've identified the issues. So in terms of why we need to exist. So when you sign up to Gender Action, what you have to do is you have to ask your senior leader or head teacher to sign the letter of commitment. So it's just a really simple, very short online form. And the reason that we get you to, or get them to sign this, is because we want this to be a programme that lasts longer than perhaps that staff member that started it does. Okay, you know, teachers leave quite frequently, so what we want to make sure is that this is embedded into the school structure and the school culture, rather than being a sort of project for now and then it's disbanded afterwards. So you sign up and you are demonstrating that you have senior leaders on side, basically, so they can embed it into the curriculum, into the culture, as I said. From this, you'll also have access to all of our online resources. We've got thousands of resources on our website. We're not precious about, you know, oh, you have to use ours. There's so many fantastic things out there. So using different range of resources is always good. And of course, it sort of changes so quickly. So once you're a supporter, you're in the fold. So from then, you are able to become an initiator. And this is when you might attend our training. So you'll get, we do 3 sessions, 2 hours each, online webinars after school. And in these sessions, we talk about some of the issues that I outlined previously, and we support and help you to create an action plan. So this action plan has 6 aspects on it. Okay, so for example, like curriculum and careers and teacher knowledge, sort of staff knowledge. So what you need to do is you need to pick 2 of those aspects of the whole school approach and create an action plan about how you are going to develop those areas. So for example, careers, you might say, well, actually, we don't really have anything for the science department for getting sort of representation of girls in science. So maybe we're going to organise a trip or do some sort of open day or get them to create posters, whatever it might be. You might also say that there's underrepresentation of male students in some of the art subjects. So you'll do something for them on that side. So you come up with this action plan. We support you to do this. You throw it back to us. We have a look at it and we throw it back to you. And then once we sort of feel that, you know, this is something that you can actually move forward with, we give you an initiator status, which sort of just recognises the hard work that you've done. From there, you can then become a champion. So a champion basically means that you have provided evidence from the things that you came up with in your action plan, so that you actually did do those career days, or the students did actually make posters and demonstrate a greater knowledge of, you know, how they can progress in STEM. Okay, so this is an example just on, so this is from Pitmaston School in Worcester, and they are just about to become Beacon Schools, which is the highest level you can be, and they've done a fantastic overhaul of their curriculum. They spent 3 years overhauling their curriculum, and I put the example of their PSHE program that they're using, also sort of work that they've been doing in assemblies. And what's really key about this school is that they have a lot of people with particular roles. So instead of it's one teacher having to manage all of this sort of extra work, it's multiple teachers being involved and taking the lead on different things. So you can sort of see the examples there of what they've done, sort of, you know, meeting the designers, bringing new topics into different subjects, but not just making it tokenistic. So not just making it, oh, it's just for International Women's Day or whatever it might be, or Black History Month, but actually bringing it in and embedding it in the curriculum as standard. So this is an example of our King Edward School in Southampton. So they again are a second school that's on their way to Beacon. So in order to become a Beacon, once you've done your champion, you provided us evidence, you then pretty much just go on to target and create action plans for the other 4 points. And then provide evidence for it. And of course, we recognize that that will take some time, okay? And we don't want this to be a quick fix, like, oh, you have to do it in sort of 6 weeks. We want you to do it sort of across the academic year. So it's quite, it's really embedded and everyone's getting involved in that. And this one specifically is looking at head of physics, looking at representation of girls in STEM. So in terms of signing up, you can, if you wanted to now, if you were able to, you can actually scan that QR code and it takes you straight to the letter of commitment form. So you're very welcome to do that now. But otherwise, you can drop me an email. You can have a look at our website. I think, have I put, there we are. And I was going to say, there are the details there.
Lovely stuff.
Am I in? I'm just in time.
You're in loads of time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Just to ask a quick question, and people, anyone with any questions, do think and pop them in the chat. But you said at the start this might be a way of reflecting work that people are already doing. So if somebody came into the program, if they think, oh, we do gender equality really, really well, could they sign up, come to the training, and then maybe, you know, the action plan could be championing things they're already doing? It doesn't necessarily have to be new things.
Yeah,
is that
exactly
right?
that. So we have had people say, oh, well, hang on a minute. Yeah, I've been doing it for a couple of years now. Do we have to go back to square one? No. So you can leap in. I mean, you always become a supporter first, only because, I mean, that literally is just signing the letter of commitment form. So it's very, very minimalist, and it just is a way for us to get your details. Okay. But you can leap straight in to become an initiator. So you are able to kind of skip those stages. If you don't want to attend the training, that's absolutely fine. So we still ask you to fill out the action plan and provide the evidence. But if it was from 2 years ago, that's absolutely fine. If you can, even if it was from 5 years ago, if you can evidence that actually that club that you started running is still being run by the students, or that curriculum day that you have is still going and it's embedded in that space, then that's absolutely fine, because that's what we want. So to become Beacon, a school will really have to have been in this space of looking at gender equity for at least a couple of years, so that we know it really is embedded. Because it's so easy, isn't it, to have something going for a year, but then it gets disbanded and is taken over by another type of CPD or whatever it might be. So
yeah, definitely. That's really good to know. And just for all members that are on the call now, so we think really carefully about what resources we bring to you. So we want them to be free, or we want them to be quality assured. So Kat did attend this training, 3 weeks of it, and came back with absolutely glowing praise for the program. I think that that is just something to highlight. Like, we actually get quite a few requests to bring stuff to you, and we really appreciate your time, and we know that you trust us, so we think things through really carefully before we bring it out to you. So that's just to say that, one of us attended, we really loved it, so it's just worth thinking about that. We also know schools have come to us asking for anti-misogyny training and gender stuff, and myself as PSHE lead, Kat as RSE lead, can support with that. But this is like a more in-depth training package that we do recommend if you're interested. Does anybody have any questions at this point about the program, or anything that they'd like to ask about this? Absolutely great. Could you give me back control of this?
Yes, I can.
I like that I can't take it off you.
I know, it's
weird, isn't it? Yeah.
Have you got it? Are you in control?
I don't know. It doesn't say so. Oh yeah, here
Yes,
I am. Yeah, lovely stuff. Okay, thank you so much. So
thanks, everybody.
Look at us exactly at 2:24. Brilliant. Just to briefly say, the information is on the screen there. Those links should all be clickable, so maybe you click them right now and come back to it at the end of the session. Obviously, everything that we've just talked about is already mandatory within your PSHE programme in some way. Gender equality definitely is, but actually so is water safety, and talking about substance misuse in an age and stage appropriate way is also part of the mandatory curriculum. So you will already be doing things around this, but these are refreshers about the expertise that's out there to support you with the work you're already doing. And so how can they do that? Maybe just think about that. And again, I'm not asking you to sort of sign up to these programs right now, but just schedule in some time to think about how they might complement your existing offer is what I would ask. You'll get all the information again, obviously, and if you can't remember any of the links or contacts, then I'm your starting point, or any Healthy Schools team member can get you there. I know that we're running until 3, so now seems an odd time to have a break, but we're going to have one anyway, just so that you can stretch your legs and do what you need to do. So we're going to have a 5-minute break. Just FYI, the recording will still run. So I don't know why I'm saying that for myself mainly. So we'll come back at 2:31 to talk PSHE assessment. At that point, it will be more interactive, so it'd be great if folks are able to interact basically. But yeah, have a quick break, and we'll see you in 5 minutes time, everybody. 5 minutes.
Thanks,
And
Sophie.
thank you so much. We'll be in touch, I'm sure.
Cool. Bye.
Bye. Okay, folks, we're back. Hi, hello. I hope everyone had a brief break, got a glass of water, whatever you need. We will finish promptly at 3, so don't worry, we're not behind or anything, just making things work for some of the external speakers and the times and things like that. I am going to crack on with the next section. I hope people are out there. We're going to have a short focus on PSHE assessment. We did a little bit of this on the last network meeting as well, but there was a request for more, so we're going to keep talking about it because I'm aware that it's a point of anxiety for some folks in schools. It's not necessarily a point of anxiety for everybody, and if you are one of those people that thinks actually we're doing assessment really brilliantly well, then now's the time to shout about it. But we have some data around assessment and some information from the network that I want to share with you, and also some things that I've taken from the PSHE Association conference, which I was able to attend last week, where they talked a bit about assessment, including Polly Haste, who is the PSHE called lead for Ofsted, and she talked a bit about how that will be assessed within the Ofsted framework. So some things to talk about there. So just really briefly, and then I'm going to show you a quick Menti that some of you filled out, which is very useful. Reminder of some of the core tenets, some of those central points, PSHE assessment. So PSHE assessment is about understanding where children and young people start with a topic, how they learn as they go, and where they end up. Ipsative is what we're working with. And I found myself thinking today, I don't know what ipsative means. Is it a very long acronym? As in, I know what it means, but I was wondering where it came from as a word, and I would have put this up as a quiz, but I've run out of steam to do that. But maybe you already knew that ipsa means of the self, so ipsative means like something that comes from the self. It's a reflection on your own learning, on your own position, your own self, and so that is what we are hoping for within assessment. Absolutely not appropriate to consider PSHE subjects something which are pass or fail, as I'm sure we wouldn't do when just asked off the cuff. But it's good to interrogate where things like that might show up. And I do think that sometimes the way we assess knowledge can become less about what we used to know, what we now know, and more about sort of accurately getting things correct. And actually, even when we're doing a very knowledge-based session, there's still sort of, if people have the skills to go and find that information out, then that's something that's really useful to reflect on. So just remembering that as kind of our core points when we're thinking about assessment. Out of interest, anyone who's on the call, did you fill out the Menti that I sent out? / whilst I'm just setting the Menti up, does anyone have any assessment questions that they have bubbling straight away at the moment? Filled out. Fab, thanks Vic, that's great. Lovely stuff. This would fail. Not fail, just be slow. Sorry folks, bear with me. How did that work? So annoying. You try and get clever. It's some Menti slides.
This is the voice of technical support. Can I offer any assistance, Sophie?
Well, I mean, maybe, but also
I did see Menti flash up very briefly.
Did you? Well, that's
I
exciting.
did, yeah.
Okay. It looked like it went away. So let me just try that again. That is what I'm hoping for. Can you see that?
We can.
Great. Can I also see you? That's what I'm trying for. Lovely. Thank you for your voice of technical support, Kat. I appreciate it. We did I just did a short Menti that a few people filled out, which I really appreciate, just to kind of get a capture of where people are at when we're thinking about assessment, because I appreciate there's a range of different views on it. And actually the best thing that came out of it was some examples from people about the kind of things they do. So I'm just going to show you the results of that, just so you can see what we did. So there's a really nice range here from all the way from this is absolutely, so the question here is an overview. PSHE assessment is a strength in my school setting. And, there's a real range here from absolutely not to absolutely yes. And so I think one thing to say is it's just worth recognising that this is a point of stress for some people, but there is skill out there and knowledge is growing all the time. As your PSHE lead in Healthy Schools, I can say that most schools, this is a focus for them this year. So we're continuing to gather that knowledge. Best practice is growing all the time. So we're in it together, if that makes sense. But it's really good to know that there's kind of that range. Pretty much everyone said it would be useful to hear best practice from other people. I've got no one saying no, it wouldn't. So that's good, because I'm going to show you some best practice examples. And also folks wanting to hear about other people's challenges. I didn't give an opportunity to feed those challenges in, but I really will be looking at for those going forward. I just didn't want to put that in a survey form, but I'm going to invite you at the end to come forward if you've got any particular challenges you want to share, but also if you'd like to bring them to me, and then we can make some case studies. A mixed bag here. No one said absolutely no, they didn't enjoy it, but I think there was a sort of middle ground, which seems fair. If you didn't get a chance to respond to this, by the way, these are some reflective exercises. Also, just a really nice way of doing anonymous surveys and feedback. One of the questions that came up is, how can you build staff confidence and staff buy-in around assessment? You might think about getting a Menti account. We've got a paid for version, but you can get a free one, and doing some staff voice using Menti to find out what the views are on assessment, as I've done here. So that is, and you could use exactly the same questions or adapt them for your setting. So just to show you, we've got some really nice examples of best practice here. To show you here that these are some things that people have mentioned and talked about. Again, they'll be familiar to folks, but I thought it was really, really nice. So using a book per class to record photos, lessons, comments from the children. This obviously is relatively common at primary schools, so having a floor book and kind of gathering the overall staff class record. But I do think there's a space for it at a secondary level as well, especially when you're having big class discussions, that it might be that you could get someone to sit out of that discussion and sort of take some notes and record that. When it comes to showing progress, we need to be able to show individual student progress, but having a class book can kind of help you build into that, so that can be really great. The KWL grids, anybody want to explain to anyone in the room who doesn't know what KWL stands for? Full fun fact, I did have to Google it. You can tell where my expertise lie. I'm going to pause to see if there's anyone who wants to say what that stands for. Anyone frantically Googling it right now? So my understanding is that this is basically that ipsative style assessment in one framework. So what children already know about a topic, and then really, really crucially what they want to learn about it, and then what they have learned. And what I really like about a KWL grid is that it shows that middle section, which gives you a bit of buy-in about what young people want to know. I think we're quite good at doing baseline assessments, at doing assessments for learning, where we're kind of looking at what people are doing in the room at the time, and then Rackhouse are on it. Brilliant. What you know, what you want to know, and then what you found out at the end. Yeah, brilliant. So we're good at doing assessment for learning in the middle, but I would say assessment for learning and what you want to know are not the same thing. And actually, getting young people to reflect on what they want to know about that topic is really useful, because it not only creates buy-in for learning, but also can give you as a teacher a bit of a lead as to what is good to focus on. So I think that would be a really useful thing to do across all key stages, actually. Obviously, we've got pre-post assessment tasks. and this kind of digital books to record children's learning, which is really interesting. I also thought that there's a colleague who's put, we include how we challenge misconceptions in the class. So sort of talking about what the actual teaching method was and then including that in sort of a record. Absolutely. Just to say, most people just wanted to listen, and that's what we're doing right now. Absolutely. One person says, yes, I'd love to, and have an example ready to go. If that's you, you're very welcome to share. And then the last bit was questions, which I have on the slides. So I just wanted to show you how nicely those come together. And if you haven't used a Menti to do a bit of staff voice on this topic, then I would highly recommend it. We're going to go back to me sharing that screen, hopefully. Okay. Hopefully you can all see that. Yeah, great, thanks so much. So just some things to think about when it comes to assessment generally. We're going to try and make this child and young person centered as much as possible. So really think about how the content's applicable to that child and young person's life. And ensure the assessment is meaningful. So when hearing from Ofsted last week, they really were stressing, I'm not one to just sort of be quoting Ofsted, by the way, but I know that it's important to people. They really were stressing meaningful engagement with the content. So one of the things they said, and I quote, is they're not interested in young people being able to say, for example, list the protected characteristics. They want to know, like, why it's important that we care about equality and on a more deep level. Now, obviously, that's got to be fitted to the age and stage of the young person, but I think it is important that we think about the assessment being meaningful and how it captures that, like, deeper knowledge. And I think anything that is just capturing like base level knowledge, if I knew this and I didn't know this and now I know this, might not be gathering that. I'm not saying that's an easy task, but that is what was said. Also, there's a lot of discussion of progress, and I think this is really important. So it's really vital that you as a whole staff group and as a school think about what progress means. Now, this will be discussed a lot within SEND settings and for SEND young people, that progress isn't necessarily linear, and that what do we mean when we say progress. But I actually think it's relevant across the board, because we need to think about when we say progress that it might be a deepening of understanding that already was there. In fact, I would argue that's quite often what progress means within PSHE. So what do I mean by that? We understand, the base use of the word family and people who care for us. We have a deeper understanding of why those connections are so important. I have had conversations with colleagues in the past around progress where they feel like the use of that term means that they need to be moving forward in some way, maybe away from those originally held positions and views. And that isn't the case. It's that depth of understanding that's really important, and thinking about how that progress is demonstrated. I know that's the kind of core tenets of assessment, but I think breaking it down rather than thinking about the tools particularly can be kind of helpful. So yeah, and having that collaborative space with staff to discuss this can be really vital. Obviously, just to remind you, intent, implementation, I can never say, and impact, but assessment comes into all of these, okay? So having that baseline assessment, people voice and contextual data will help you show how you are shaping your curriculum and what your intent is when it comes to PSHE. So it's really central to that. When you do your implementation, assessment can help build staff confidence because you can show what is working, what isn't, and getting that feedback. And can show sort of like a little bit of evaluation about how the subject is going. And then impact, again, people want to see progression, but that can mean deepening of people's values and understanding and their confidence with these topics. And obviously that assessment can be really useful in that situation. Okay, all of that is not very, you're like, okay, fine, but how do we actually do these things? So when we gave out iMatter, when we delivered it to you, we asked you all to complete a form. And on that form, it asked for you to say your kind of like top, how you're doing assessment, basically. Over 80 people have downloaded iMatter and are using it now, 80 schools and settings across Manchester, and all of them completed how they were doing assessment, which means we have this lovely bank of data as to how assessment is happening across the city. And rather than me just talking at you, I thought I'd just show it to you. So this is an A to Z of all of the assessment methods that we're aware of happening across the city at the moment. Two things I'd like you to do in the chat. One, if you see a method that you've not heard of before, can you pop that in the chat? And 2, if something you're doing in school is not there, it's not on the list, then pop that in the chat. So this is our A to Z that we've got here. I'm going to read them out just so that, you know, we know that we're all on the same page. So assessment against the endpoints of each year group with baseline quizzes, assessment for learning, feedback and evaluation forms. So book scrutiny with pupil voice activities, event for parents by governing body by outcome, calendared assessments like every other subject. So there is something about like it being comparable to other subjects, which is really important, but obviously we don't want to be just mimicking that if it's not applicable. Can-do statements, cold and hot tasks is really useful and really interesting. Every pupil has a journal to record in every week in tandem. End of topic quizzes to be introduced. Diagnostic activity return to at the end of the unit. So brilliant, that iterative style, the baseline assessment that comes back. Google form quizzes and reflection tasks. Great. Half-termly assessed through a quiz and floor booklet, I can statements and pupil voice. And then also in-school assessments, tracked on classroom monitor and EHCP outcomes, brilliant. Knowledge quizzes, great. Absolutely good to be doing knowledge quizzes, but just make sure that it's capturing some of that depth. Microsoft Forms assessment sent to students to complete. So yeah, absolutely like commonplace and useful. And then we sort of move into, again, PSHE floor books, scrutinies, pupil voice, really important. Student assessment pre and post each topic is the classic sort of method for doing that. I would say if we're doing pre and post assessment, really getting in the sort of that idea of what would you want to be learning, not just like what did we know and what have we learned, that sort of middle step, I think is important, to be honest, to gather that depth of meaning. Using our pilot model, so I'll show you that, and then our whole school assessment target tracker. Brilliant. Okay, cool. So anything on there that you've not heard of before, anything that we maybe have missed that's not there, feel free to pop that in the chat. That's really useful. This is just, it's not comprehensive. I just thought I'd show you that across the city, these are the things that people have said they're using, which is really useful to know that breadth is out there. So some questions we had from the Mentee was, how do you get staff on board with assessment? So my honest response to that is to firstly acknowledge that it's a new, like, hard piece of work. They might not have felt like assessment is something that's part of PSHE, and that might be part of the reticence, but also asking what the reticence is. Is it a question of time? Do they not think it's relevant to the subject? What is it? And maybe try to do that question in an anonymous format, like a Mentee or something like that, so people feel like they can be really honest. Once you know what the block might be, then trying to find some solutions to those specific issues, but equally making a case for how it can really help inform their teaching practice, because they'll know a bit more about the knowledge in the room. You know, we don't have as good a picture of where young people start with PSHE, so it's important to be asking those questions. The next two were sort of broader questions around PSHE beyond assessment. So when launching a new PSHE scheme across the school, what would you say is the most important thing to start with? I would say the most important thing to start with is that you have a good understanding of the context that you are working in, but also that you've got a really good staff buy-in, that people know that this is new, but it's not a criticism of their previous practice, that you're trying to build on that existing skill to get even better. And one of the ways of doing that is to make sure people understand why there's a new scheme, how it's been developed, those kinds of things like that. That obviously you need to lead with pupil voice and also parental engagement, all of those things together. But if I was to start one place, I'd say it would be with staff buy-in. And then any top tips for supporting SEND pupils? So yeah, actually we've developed and are developing more resources around active education, but I think active education is important with all types of PSHE education, actually, to get people as engaged as possible. And so yeah, that would be my sort of main way to think about that within whole class teaching, that you're making sure that your resources are as active as possible, that we're not just relying on class discussion, that there's plenty of opportunity for people to be more than just engaged from an oracy point of view. It would be my suggestion. We're rapidly close to the end of time, so I just wanted to quickly say, does anyone have any assessment-based questions, anything that they'd like to ask about, to say at this point? Anything that you're worried about around this topic? I'm just going to pause briefly. Fab. Hopefully everyone's okay out there. So just to wrap up, really, I just want to thank everyone's attention. Oh, here we go. There's such a wide range of topics in PSHE. Do other schools assess everything? Yeah, really good question. A question for broader schools, I can sort of speak to what maybe is kind of expected, but like anybody out there, how do you assess all the topics that we have to cover in PSHE? If anyone is jumping out, by the way, just before you go, I'll pop that there. It's really, really, really helpful to get feedback on these sessions. To know if they're hitting the mark, they're for you. So if it's not what you need, then that's the space to say it in. So we've got a question there about whether other schools assess everything. Obviously, Emma, I can't speak to what every school does, but just in the interest of giving you some guidance on that, I think that evidencing what's covered, no problem, absolutely fine. If you don't get a chance to fill out the evaluation form now, then do feel free, then do that later when I email it out. Evidencing what's covered, and then, yeah, having some kind of start and end point for self-assessment. So if you can, that's really useful. That might be easier to do for everything in a primary setting when you're going topic-wise. But even within the lesson, you can sort of, if you are doing a one-off lesson at secondary that's sort of like is connected to other areas but is kind of newer content, we need to at least be assessing prior learning at the start of the session so that people know we know where they're at. So yeah. We've got another question, which is, do you have any examples of PSHE quizzes used? Use iMatter. So not off the top of my head. Obviously assessment for knowledge is important when it comes to, and you can use quizzes for that. I would just have a pinch of salt when it comes to using too many quizzes, because obviously it's that depth of understanding that we want people to have. So we might be moving away from just like a true false. If it's a quiz where it's people reflecting on what they think, then that might be more useful, possibly. Really interesting question from Vicky there. So interested to know what criteria people are assessing against balance of knowledge, skills, engagement. So folks might have a response to that. Vicky, what I would say in terms of that is it's again about having that idea of what progress might look like, but certainly from what I've understood from training I've been on and things like that, that like the progress can really be about confidence in a subject, skills in a subject, and the ability to understand your own views in the area. So I guess that's much more sort of skills, engagement, and you can set those clear criteria. Knowledge is obviously important, but the application of that knowledge, which still comes back to skills really, is also quite key. So if you're going to have like a balance, it would be lean towards that sort of skills and self-reflective, so self-knowledge possibly, rather than, you know, as I say, I can list these protected characteristics, for example. I don't know if that answers the question. Karen says, we assess termly and we assess 3 areas: health and well-being, relationships and living in the wild world, and link this with the overarching question each lesson. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so yeah, a very clear sort of line there, which is really helpful for folks to be able to see. And I think having a big question is something that lots of schools do, and I think that's really useful at primary and secondary and SEND settings to kind of have that like continual reflection for people to keep coming back to. And again, progress with that question might not be that your view has changed from start to finish, the end of the thing, end of the term, sorry. It might be that there's a depth to the answer to that question now, which is much more useful. Great. Term the assessments either by using Kahoot or paper-based in 3 areas. and using those KWL grids. Yeah, I think they're really great. I think KWL grids, I'd like to see more of those at secondary. What do you want to learn about this in this topic? And maybe also making sure that that's quite private. I think that for some secondary students, it might be difficult for them to say, I want to learn about this topic, for example, but they may actually be wanting to know that. So finding ways of doing that could be really good. I don't want anyone running over on time. So if there's anything else people would like to ask, then that's the space to do it. Just to flip back a slide here. We are racing towards the summer term, but that doesn't mean your PSHE support is over. No, by no means at all. The next intro to the pedagogy of PSHE is on April the 24th. That's a universal offer. I've delivered it in lots of schools this year, but it's available online. So 3 till 5 p.m. It's suitable for primary and secondary SEND settings, so feel free to come along. I can also come and deliver that in-house if you'd like me to. So again, feel free to get in touch and book that in. The next PSHE coordinator training is June the 10th. So do come along to that. It's in the same week as the PSHE network meeting. There's a reason for that, because that's potentially the end of my contract, who knows? So, you know, get me while you can at that point, because I'm covering a maternity leave. I'm not just being dismissed. So that's why they're both back to back there. So if you are a new coordinator or you'd like a refresher, then feel free to come along to that training on June the 10th. That'd be great. And the next network meeting is Wednesday the 12th. I will be asking in the email I send out for suggestions on things you'd like me to talk about, topics you'd like to cover. So do let me know. If you sat here thinking, Sophie, this wasn't relevant to me, then let me know what would be relevant, because it's your space. I just try and bring you the best that I can, that we know about at the time. Do fill out the feedback form. I hope you've enjoyed today. I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully it's useful. Really appreciate your feedback. And I'm going to stop talking right there so that you can crack on with your day. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thank you, Soph.
No worries. Thanks, Kim. Nice to see you.